Hello, you know who I am. If you don't, well, uh, hi, I'm Geek Converted Man. Yeah. Alright, so normally I yell my name, but today I didn't. Yeah. I just want to, uh, 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 I complain about there not being new arguments for God, you know, and Bro Video, he's got one. Okay. Yeah, right. The word, the letter P or C. So I hate it already. Premise one: if God became man, we would expect certain behaviors. Premise two: Jesus personified those behaviors. Con- Premise three: therefore Jesus was God. Con- Premise four: therefore God exists, or is that supposed to be the conclusion? I get. Okay, so circular reasoning. God also, there's a huge assumption being made that you know what certain behaviors you would expect from God, and then also you're assuming that God, or that Jesus personified those behaviors that you already assumed. So that's circular in full. You start out with the idea that God will do certain things, and hey, look, Jesus did those things. The non sequitur, God existing isn't a conclusion that Jesus being God could be true in the story, but not in reality. So God existing is still a separate question because the Jesus is only a character in a story. It's not like the actual person actually did the things, but people want that to be true. Like, it's like, look, you don't know what he said or what he did. Um, we know people believed that he did stuff and said stuff. So yeah. Golly. The old, yeah, the what other? It's a non sequitur, begging the question. Of course, it's just a misleading premise. The first premise just assumes things without any argumentation. Uh, hmm, there's many other possible reasons why Jesus might behave the way that he did, beside him being God. In fact, well, he could, again, you're assuming that Jesus did any of the things that he supposedly did in the Bible, which is more circular argumentation because you haven't proven the Bible. So, no. You'd have to show P1 is true. Or no, you'd have to show that you know what behaviors God would exhibit as a human. How could you ever know that if God is unknowable? In the same breath, an apologist will tell you what God wants and then tell you that God's unknowable when you ask why is there evil and suffering in the world. It's like, well, God has some plan for it. It's fine. Why is there all this suffering in the world? Well, because people, did bad things. Okay, well, all right, why doesn't God just forgive us and get over it then and just let us be? Well, that's what Jesus is for. Okay, but there's still bad stuff. Well, eventually God's going to fix it. Well, what's taking him so long? Why doesn't he just fix it already? Why is he taking his time? What's he waiting for? How many people need to live and die before God decides that the time is up? Like, oh, it's a mystery. God has some reason, all that. But then even though there's a mystery of God, we somehow know what behaviors to expect from God if he became human. Yeah, sure. And then, oh yeah, hey, by the way, the character Jesus just happens to do all the things that I think God would do. Oh, okay. I don't know. I personally think that God would not make itself into one single being. I think that God would show up all to every single person individually and talk to them and explain to them how and why it's God, how it works, how it functions, what it wants from us or doesn't want from us, and let us probe it and poke it and test it and whatever we need to do to verify that it's God, and then accept him as a friend or reject him as a foe. That's the sort of behavior I would expect from God. Jesus didn't fulfill my expectations, therefore, Jesus isn't God, and therefore, God doesn't exist. And and so if that reductio ad absurdum doesn't sit well with the person that made this argument, then this argument's full. Well, it's a hypothetical syllogism at any rate. Well, it's not. It's it's a sloppy half hypothetical syllogism. It's a mixed syllogism because it has if once and not again. So it's a mixed hypothetical. But yeah, there's nothing to prove P1 is true, uh, or how we would know what behaviors to expect of God. Then it becomes circular the moment that you say that Jesus then personified those behaviors, because you haven't argued that you haven't argued one, and then three three somewhat follows, but doesn't. But then four doesn't follow from three. So the conclusion is a non sequitur, even if you accept the first three premises. Um, because God's existence isn't guaranteed by Jesus being God, and that's because God could simply be a character in the book. But at least he tried, right? I mean, sure, he came up with a new bad argument, but at least he made a new one, right? I mean, should I be celebrating? I don't know. It's just bad. And you could easily replace this with anything. If God became man, we expect certain behaviors. I personify those behaviors. Therefore, I'm God. You know? I mean, you could say it about anybody because you don't. What certain behaviors are you expecting? Why would you expect anything from God? How do you? It's it's an unjustifiable premise in premise one. You cannot even get there. You would need a whole separate argument to demonstrate what behaviors you would expect from God, and you would still need to justify that. You would still need to prove God. This argument's broken. It's so broken. It's hilarious. I think I wrote that. What did I write? Let's see. Oh, I forgot to thumb it down. Got to do that. There we go. I wrote, this argument's so broken it's funny. Yeah. Um. So yeah. Oh wait, there's this comment here I have to interact with. The fact there's so many arguments for God's existence is itself an argument for God's existence. That's the stupidest thing I ever read. Uh. Let's see. I could make a 300 of flat Earth, but that doesn't do much. Yeah. How many do I need to make before anime becomes real? I mean, if you could just argue things into existence, wouldn't that be great? Oh man. Well, like I said, he has a new bad argument. Just circular reasoning. Uh, just a bald assertion. Uh, and a non sequitur. I only need two fallacies. I mean, there's more in there, but I only need those two, really. Wow. Okay, that's it. I just wanted to share that real quick. Yeah, I know. This video is not an hour long. Go figure. Until next time, stay skeptical. And after that, well, remain skeptical.